So welcome everybody to a mid-year roundup of my year of films so far. Yeah, we're going to be looking at new releases that I've seen this year so far. We're going to be looking at films that I've not seen before this year that are for first-time watches, and yeah, best, worst, most watch actors, actresses, and directors, and the like. Yeah, this is all thanks to Letterboxd and their excellent stat compiling, uh, algorithms and whatever you want to call it. Yeah, 2022 year in film so far has looked like this in terms of new releases. Yeah, The Batman is still my favourite film of this year so far, although Everything Everywhere All at Once came extremely close, and so did The Northman, to be honest. The Bad Guys is still my favourite animation of the year so far. I absolutely adored that film. I know some people didn't really like it, but yeah, I wasn't expecting much from that, but yeah, got a lot out of that. Doctor Strange is my second favourite superhero film of the year. Obviously Batman is my first. Then you've got The House, which is my favourite film that wasn't released at cinemas, but was released this year as it was a Netflix only film. And yeah, X is my favourite horror film of the year so far as well, pipping it being at the top just ahead of Men and Scream. Black Phone also came really rather close to my top 10, but I think Scream just was a little bit more fun as being a horror film. And yeah, my least favourite films of this year so far: Uncharted, Sing 2, and Moonfall. Moonfall was fun, but only really in a stupid kind of way. It's typical Roland Emmerich, to be honest. But yeah, they're my three least favourite films of the year so far. Yeah. And yeah, films by week, as you can see, have been fairly consistent, usually around 13 or 14 films a week. Lowest has been 10, but still double figures. Yeah, been a really consistent year so far. As you can see, 354 films watched, 50.6 on average per month, and 13.1 on average per week. Most watched day has been Sunday, 72 films, purely because that's when I'm never work a Sunday. But I usually work 1 in 4 Saturdays, so yeah, that's why it's a little bit lower than Sundays. And yeah, obviously I work all week, yeah. But Mondays I also have 1 in 4 off, yeah, that's why they're a little bit higher than the rest of the week. Yeah, overall been really rather consistent. The first film I watched this year was Invisible Target, really rather fun Asian action film. And then last film was Jade. Bit of a rip-off of Basic Instinct in some regards, but still decent enough. And yeah, favourite films of the year so far are these. Yeah, in at number 20 is Luca. Surprised I never got around to watching that when it came out last year, but still a really rather fantastic film. Then Invisible Target started the year off really strong, and it's still just in the top 20. Then Bandidos, a really rather good spaghetti western. Then The Apartment, a fun comedy drama with a serious, thematic weight to it. Then The Deadly Affair, highly recommend watching that. I'm not going to say too much about it, but it's really rather great. Then Deleuze, Jean-Pierre Melville, who you'll see more in this mid-year roundup. Fantastic film from him. Started off the decade really rather well. And then Written on the Wind, Douglas Sirk, fantastic kind of gothic drama film. Then Drunken Master with Jackie Chan. Been watching a lot of his films lately, and I'm going to watch even more when the Police Story trilogy comes out on 4K. Then we got Samurai 2, Duel at Ichioji Temple, the best of that trilogy. Just pips the third one, and far better than the first one. Then Rawhide, really rather good western. Then Brother, a really rather good Russian crime drama, really highly recommend it. Then Between Heaven and Hell, solid World War II film. Same with Cross of Iron, which has some of the best production value of any World War II film from the 60s or 70s, especially in terms of the action scenes. Then Le Deuxième Souffle, hope I'm saying that right, but yeah, another Jean-Pierre Melville film there, cracking effort. Then The Harder They Fall, not going to say too much about that because I'm going to be bringing up a review of that. It's part of the Colombian Noir number 5 box set, but I will just say this, it is my favourite of the 6. Then Crime Story, again Jackie Chan, far more serious effort from him, a lot less in terms of martial arts fighting style action, more gunplay, but really rather good. Then Police Story, I know I've said that they're going to watch the trilogy again, but I have seen the first 2 already, because I got them on Blu-ray when Eureka were doing a sale. But yeah, gonna definitely be getting the trilogy on 4K. Then White Dog, one of the best Samuel Fuller films ever made, and yeah, it was his last Western effort before he moved to France after this got canned after I think it was Paramount got a bit jittery over releasing it. So yeah, bit of a shame, but a fantastic film regardless. Then Brief Encounter, one of the few romance films that I actually properly enjoy, and yeah, No Coward, yeah, does a solid job in terms of producing it. And then finally, Army of Shadows, again, Jean-Pierre Melville, fantastic film, easily one of my favourite World War II films, and yeah, deals with the French resistance, so yeah, highly recommend trying that if you haven't already. And then yeah, every film I've watched is basically in terms of oldest to newest, so yeah, oldest film I've seen so far, and ever not just in terms of this year, but ever, is the 1902 film A Trip to the Moon, then The Hands of Orlac from 1924, and then White Zombie from 1932, the oldest sound film that I've seen so far this year. So yeah, overall been a really rather good year, but obviously there have been some awful films that I've watched, and these are the top 10 worst. In at number 10, Day of the Animals, yeah, Creature Future, and well, not even really that, When Nature Attacks kind of film, in the same vein of Jaws or Alligator, but more boring, basically. And then From Hell It Came, really wanted to like that a lot more, because it's got a really rather interesting monster, but yeah, just doesn't really stick the execution. Beginning and the End is a yeah, typical Burt I. Gordon film, in terms of just, you know, really bad special effects and not much else going for it. Then Dick Barton Special Agent, the worst of that trilogy. The other two are a little bit better, but yeah, that's definitely the worst of the three. Speaking of which, Skyline, the worst of that trilogy as well. Surprisingly, the other two were a little bit better than the first one, but yeah, that is absolutely dreadful. Then Amityville, A New Generation. Yeah, that's, and again, another really, really bad series in general. Only really the second film is any good. First one's decent, but it's a little bit boring, but yeah, nowhere near as boring as this one. Then Killer Crocodile, which yeah, is another bit boring When Nature Attacks film, far worse than, say, Alligator. Then The Ape Man, Bela Lugosi, decent, but everything else is pretty poor. The Mangler, it is a rewatch, but yeah, I watched it purely because our video released it on Blu-ray for the first time, and yeah, not gotten any better with that transfer. And finally, The Amityville Curse, the worst of that series I've seen so far. Got one more film from the original lot of films that was released starting in the 70s and lasting until 1997. But yeah, that is either the worst of the bunch. It feels completely removed from the series in general, and yeah, is an absolute bore. So yeah, now let's look at countries. So yeah, English is obviously the highest language. It's never not going to be, quite frankly. But then you got Italian, German, French, Spanish, Cantonese, Japanese, Chinese, Russian, and Portuguese. So yeah, the non-English languages are a bit jumbled up more than usual. Usually it's, you know, French that is usually way up there, but with the amount of spaghetti westerns that I've been watching and Italian crime films, it's Italy that is currently in second. I like these themes of nano genres, though they're a little bit vague in some regards, so I don't really pay attention to them. And then here we go, these are the interesting stuff. So yeah, I've watched 18 films so far from this year, but that is only 5.1% of what I watched so far this year. Massive 94.9% films off released from before this year, but rewatches are on the down. I think rewatches were a lot higher than they are so far this year, from last year, than they are so far this year. So yeah, 84.2% of films I've not seen before this year. So yeah, really pleased with that score. And then most of them are in review. Generally don't review a film if it's a rewatch, that I don't have anything new to say about it. And yeah, ratings aren't particularly great, really. Only 10 5-star films so far this year, but 62 4.5 and 112 4-star films. But yeah, I say average is about 2.5 stars. So as you can see, there's not been that many that I've rated less than average. But yeah, I would have liked the 5 and the 4.5 to be more, but hopefully that will be the case as we go through the year. And these are the most watched stars. So yeah, Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce, and Mary Gordon are purely in there purely because of the Sherlock Holmes series that ran from the late 30s to the late mid 40s. 13 films I think there were in total. So yeah, that's why there were as many as they are there. might have been 14 or 15, I can't remember quite how many films there were, but there were a lot in such a short space of time. But yeah, Bernard Lee, Louisa Maxwell, and Sean Connery and Desmond Llewellyn are also in there because of the Bond series. Watching them at the cinema so far this year, each being released every Saturday, so yeah, really enjoying going through those. Currently going to be watching For Your Eyes Only today, and then it will be Octopussy the week after, so yeah, been really enjoying them. Some of the films have actually gotten a little bit better being at the cinema, weirdly. And then David Arquette, Courtney Cox are in there because they were in the Scream films, and I also watch Eight-Legged Freaks with David Arquette, so 5 Scream films and that one film is why he's there. Then you've got Peter Cushing, Humphrey Bogart, Christopher Lee, Dennis Howey. So yeah, Peter Cushing, he's been in these that I've watched so far, so yeah, as you can see, most of them are pretty good. Only really Night of the Big Heat and The Devil's Men were a bit of a letdown, but the rest have been fairly solid. And these are all, apart from Tales of the Crypt, all first time watches. And then with Humphrey Bogart, yeah, purely mainly the Columbia Noir #5 box set, racking up all those scores, but Dead End was pretty good as well. Then Christopher Lee also in Night of the Big Heat along with Peter Cushing, but again, that's the only real letdown of the bunch that I've seen. Only one rewatch with The Man with the Golden Gun. And Dennis Howey, he was in the Sherlock Holmes films. And Paul Kavanagh, he was in the Sherlock Holmes films as well, was he? Yeah, it was in 3 of them. But also in Hollywood Story, directed by William Castle, and The She-Devil, which was in the Hollywood, one of the box set from Imprint, which was pretty good. Then we have Frederick Warlock, Whit Bissell, Holmes with Herbert, Ken Loach, and Bela Lugosi. Again, Frederick Warlock was in the Sherlock Holmes films. A lot of actors came back time and time again in that series. Then Whit Bissell was in Family Secret, Tokyo Joe, so 2 of the Columbia Noir films there. Also Monster on the Campus, which was released by Eureka, The Defiant Ones, and Raw Deal. Then Holmes Herbert again in the Sherlock Holmes films. Then we've got Ken Loach, who was in a bunch of the Jackie Chan's films, 4 of them, and then Invisible Target from the first film of the year. And finally Bela Lugosi. Only really the 8-Man and Return of the 8-Man were a bit of a letdown. Invisible Ghost was decent. Oh yeah, Devil Bat was pretty letdown as well. So basically only White Zombie was a good film there, unfortunately. And then directors. So Roy William Neill, he directed all of the 11 Sherlock Holmes films, outside of the first 2 or 3 that there were. And yeah, done a pretty good job, as you can see. Most of them are 3.5 stars or more. There were 1, 2, 3 that gave 4 stars. So yeah, overall a really solid series. A couple of hits or misses, but on the whole really rather good. Then Richard Fleischer, Jean-Pierre Melville, Jackie Chan, Bud Boddicker, all been fairly solid really. Only really let down from Fleischer here was Amityville 3D. Trapped was decent but not remarkable, but yeah, the rest pretty damn good, and 2 4.5 stars there from him. Jean-Pierre Melville, pretty much a home run on his front. Only Leon Warren Priest was the letdown out of the bunch, but yeah, the rest were pretty good. 3 4.5 star films there. And then Jackie Chan, he directed a lot of his 80s films, so yeah, as you can see, did a fairly good job in those. And Bud Boddicker worked with what's his name? Can't remember his name. Hang on. Yeah, Randolph Scott. He worked a lot of the times with Randolph Scott, so yeah, he's in most of those, I think. So yeah, Only a Time to Die was a real letdown out of those. The others got 4 out of 5. And Enzo G. Castorelli, Terence Young, Guy Hamilton, Wes Craven, Lewis Gilbert. So Enzo did I've bought all 4 of these films, and as you can see, all 4 of them were pretty good. Terence Young, mostly the James Bond films. The Valachi Papers was decent, but yeah, nowhere near as good as his James Bond efforts. Guy Hamilton, all 4 of the Bond films. Wes Craven, the first 4 Scream films. And Lewis Gilbert, 3 of the 4 James Bond films. Spy Love Me is still my favourite Roger Moore effort, but Cast a Dark Shadow was pretty good as well from him. Got 2 more of his to watch as well, Barabbas and... no, not Barabbas. Damn the Defiant and... oh, I only just bought it, just forgotten. Hang on. Let's see what I own. Handy way of seeing. Oh, Sink the Bismarck. So yeah, I've bought 2 of his recently, so he'll eventually get up to 5 films. And then Val Guest, Hiroshi Inagaki, Lucio Fulci, Kinji Fukasaku, Billy Wilder. I can't say names. Yeah, Val Guest did 3 solid efforts there. They were part of the Eureka Indicator releases. So yeah, and Hiroshi here did the Samurai trilogy, really rather good trilogy, but the last 2 films were better than the first. Then Lucio Fulci did 2 fantastic efforts in the Psychic and Massacre Time, and the Beyond was pretty good as well, despite not making much sense. Then Kinji did these mobster films from the 70s in Japan. Cots vs. Fugs is easily my favourite of the 3. And then Billy Wilder did these 3. So yeah, Stalag 17, The Apartment, and 5 Graves of Cairo, all pretty good. Got another one of his on the way as well, in the form of the major and the minor. And finally, Toby Hooper, Richard Lester, Michael Anderson, John Gilling, and Peter Crane. So yeah, Toby Hooper, these have been rewatches. Mangler was awful, but I enjoyed rewatching Life Force and Invaders from Mars. Richard Lester, Cuba was a little bit underwhelming, but the 2 Musketeer films were decent. Michael Anderson, Wrecker the Mary Deer was pretty good. Quilla Memorandum was decent, but Millennium was a little bit crazy in its premise, but mostly fun. Then John Gilling, Reptile was a bit underwhelming, but Plague of the Zombies and Interpol were decent. And finally Peter Crane, who did the 3 films from the Pimini organisation. 3 really good films. Highly surprised by how great they were, to be honest. So yeah, that is one of the standouts of this year in terms of what I've bought. And yeah, most liked film that I've reviewed has been Torture Garden with 5 likes, so it's pretty good. And yeah, highest average, Everything Everywhere All at Once at 4.5. Lowest average, Amityville Curse with 1.6. Quite frankly, doesn't deserve that. Most popular, The Batman with 4.1. And most obscure, Moments with 3.5 stars. So yeah, been a mega year, quite frankly, as you can see, and that's not even all of the films. This is what my world map is looking like. Pretty full, as you can see. So yeah, really pleased with how my world map is so far turned out. Obviously I need more African films, more Middle Eastern films and the like, but on the whole it's a fairly solid world map, and this is where films are produced or made, and yeah, that's what counts as being made in a certain country. So yeah, overall been a fantastic half of the year. Really hope the second half is even better. Not sure whether or not that's going to be the case in terms of new releases, because there's not many new films coming out that I'm all that excited about. It's only really Thor Ragnarok, Nope, and they're the only 2 that are really coming to mind immediately, but here's hoping that there are some surprises regardless. So yeah, nonetheless, thanks for watching. I hope you've had a fantastic first half of the year in terms of films, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.